This is your prophecy update. Well, as you might know, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is starting to move the Hurricane Harvey conversation to climate change. Sanders tweeted that the next move is to understand the role that climate change has played in this tragedy. Senator Sanders, though, isn't the first person to turn attention to climate change and its possible role in the disaster. Both CNN and MSNBC beat him to the punch by a couple of days. The cable networks began pushing the claims that climate change makes storms stronger and more frequent on Monday night. The question is this true? Well, actually, no, it's not. Listen, folks, from the 60s to the late 70s, even some people into the 80s, spread the hoax of a global cooling period and the potential for a modern ice age. They stated that, number one, a few decades ago, the media and many in the scientific community were in hysterics over global cooling. Newsbusters gave a roundup of the various news outlets that promoted the global cooling hysterics back in the 1970s. Scientists see ice age in the future. That was the Washington Post, January 11th, 1970. Is mankind manufacturing a new ice age for itself? The Los Angeles Times, January 15th, 1970. Scientists predict a new ice age by the 21st century. That was the Boston Globe, April 16th, 1970. And then the New York Times stated on July 18th of that year that the U.S. and Soviet press studies of a colder Arctic. And then finally, dirt will bring the new ice age. That's the Sydney Morning Herald, October 19th. However, once they decided that they couldn't prove the science of a global cooling period and that ice age, what do? They gave up, right? No. They turned to global warming at that point. Many of you know in 2006, Al Gore's climate documentary, An Inconvenient Truth, he stated that sea levels could rise as the result of global warming 6 meters or 20 feet with the melting of the Antarctic and the Greenland ice sheets. Well, now we know that the South Pole is gaining more ice than it's losing. And that as a result of global warming, climate change, that there would be an increase in the amount of tornadoes. But tornadoes have been declining for decades. That there would be massive flooding in China and India. It hasn't happened. Melting Arctic, it's false. 2015, the Arctic represented the largest refreezing in years. And of course, many of you heard about the polar bear extinction as a result of global warming. Actually, they're increasing, not decreasing. And that temperature increases would occur due to CO2 in the air. However, no significant rise in the Earth's temperature has occurred over the last couple decades. And then they said Katrina, that happened in New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina, would be a foreshadow of the things in the future and an increase of hurricanes. But that was false because from the time the movie was put out in 2006 to 2016, there were no F3 hurricanes. And then, of course, Thursday, August 24th, 2017, when Hurricane Harvey struck, it marked a record 142 straight months since the last major hurricane made landfall in the continental United States. So we've went from an ice age in the 70s to global warming in the 90s to climate change, and now, to be politically correct, you would say weather extremes. So the climate change hoax is simply a scare tactic by the United Nations to redistribute the wealth of the world, all in an effort to further their socialistic global governing agenda. The same global government prophesied to be in power just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the Battle of Armageddon.